6-16 in September, Frank. What the heck happened? What is your explanation?
Well, I think finally the smoke and mirrors finally cleared up, and they were getting a lot of players playing above their head, and honestly, when we look back, there were times in the season where it didn't seem to be making sense that they would be doing so well, and they kept winning all those one-run games, and usually when you win all those one-run games, eventually something has to give, and it just seemed like it caught up to the Phillies where if anybody slipped in any way, well, whether it was the offense, the bullpen, the starting pitching, when one of those things would go wrong, off went everything, and it just seemed like it was a perfect storm where all that happened at once.
So, is there blame? Do you look at something and say this isn't right? Is it they exceeded expectations? I mean, you're 6-16 in September. Somebody's at fault.
That's a really hard one because I think that there was the obligation to really let the players play, and even in the mid-season when even people would get frustrated about what was going on, you still kind of had to say, all right, well, we got to see these guys through. And I think when we saw it through, we saw that some of these guys are not the guys that we were hoping they would be, or we thought they might be at the top of their ceiling. And ultimately, I think that's actually a good thing to actually know who some of these players are so that when you go forward, you know that they're not a known quantity. And you know what, if the Phillies had won and, kept winning, maybe you don't know that, and then maybe you hurt yourself more long term. So in some ways, I think it's just you need the whole season to really figure out who the players are, and the end result was, I think we saw that some of the players weren't what we thought they were.
We'll get to the mailbag questions in a second. What is your takeaway? Like, if you ask me 10 questions 10 times, I could give you an opinion, except for when it comes to Kapler. I don't know what I think. I'm like indifferent. I don't know if I like him. I don't know if I don't like him. I don't know what to think of this guy. I don't know what to think of his role is in the success or failures of this team. I'm not sure. I mean, what do you take away from this season about Gabe Kapler?
I think he's a rookie manager who learned a lot. I think, as one would expect, he would make some mistakes along the way. I don't think it's fair to think that a rookie manager is perfect, and I think the reason why they brought in a rookie manager was because they knew that the team still had some room to grow. They still had some development ahead of them. And if you add somebody that you hope can sort of grow with them, that might be a good match. Now, if they had gone for the veteran win now manager, and the players aren't yet at that win right now mode, you might have a little bit of a mismatch. So I think they got him because he's patient, and he showed his patience. While those of us that might have been watching it might have been pulling out our hair on the sideline, he kind of kept the steady persona. He kept going forward. He seems like he remained loyal to the players on his team to a certain extent, and when he had to, he would make a change. But really, I guess the ultimate question that you ask about somebody like him was he expected to win with the players that he had when he went in, or is this a different situation? And I think the situation he went in on was this isn't the year, and therefore it's a good time for a new young manager to get his feet wet.
Frank, this is from Greg. He said, this season has been worse than the previous season. We were supposed to learn who the players were that are a part of the Phillies' future. He said, I don't think we accomplished that. If the team does not improve drastically via trades, I agree too, Greg. If the team does not improve drastically via trades and free agents this upcoming offseason, the fan base is going to be angry. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think he is very correct that the fans might be angry. And, for years, all right, so how long have I been doing this with you guys? I think it's this is the third full season. Frequently, we kept pointing to this upcoming off season, right? Because this is the one that has the Bryce Harper. This is the one that has the Manny Machado. And even beyond that, there are many other really, really good names that are going to be available as free agents this off season. So that was always the off season ahead that we were looking at. And I agreed with Greg that this is going to be very, very crucial that the Phillies need to acquire the right kind of talent. Now, in terms of we need to figure out who the pieces are, I think there's some things that we can say we did learn. I think we learned that Odubel Herrera is very inconsistent. Now, Mike, you and I think we kind of agreed this before the season began that we thought that, he was not the consistent type, and he had that great April, and I think you and I were looking at each other saying, "Oh wow, maybe we were wrong. Maybe he is that consistent player." I think he's a very talented player, but remains an inconsistent player, and I think they have a better idea as to who Odubel Herrera is. That he's going to have those flashes of brilliance like he did in April, and then there's going to be other times where he's going to really struggle. So I think that's a conclusion that you can draw because he did not keep that up for the whole season. Now, I think we also look at that starting rotation and see that Vince Velasquez, Nick Pivetta, and Zach Eflin, they all have their promising pieces, but I think they also determined that you can't have all three of them in your rotation at once because each of them has their holes, and maybe they're more of the 4 and 5 type starters. And next year, they're probably going to look to add somebody, probably from the left side, who can give them another perspective. I think you learn that Sir Anthony Dominguez is a talented bullpen arm, and that's something you can kind of work with as you build to go forward. You learn that Roman Quinn is very talented, again, although the caveat is he was injured a bunch, so I think he kind of worked his way into their long-term plans, whether it's a fourth outfielder or a starter, that remains to be seen. And then that Rhys Hoskins, he was okay in left field last year. I think, he's not okay in left field. And, that's something where if you're trying to build a long-term plan, you really need to know. And I think, finally, Aaron Nola is really, really, really good. Nola emerged as an ace type. And, having that happen, now, for me, I said it a bunch of times on the air, I think it's a real shame that they ended up not really taking advantage of a stellar season like that. And you wonder if Aaron Nola will have one that level again, or he might have 1 or 2 left in him in his career. But that's the type of season that players, have once a career in a lot of cases. So I definitely think that this is a crucial all season. I think they're going to be very active in free agency. And, back when I was at that Arrieta press conference in spring training, they kept John Middleton. He said, right with me standing there, "Hey, I have a lot of names circled for the next off season." And of course, you can't tell us which because that's tampering. But you got to think he's going in on some of these big names that potentially could transform this franchise.
All right. Speaking of the off season, here's a question from Chris. He wants to know, what are the chances that the Phillies name Rob Thompson, no relation to Pete, manager in the off season?
Well, I think there's a better chance of Pete Thompson managing the Phillies next year than there is Rob Thompson. And look, I say that for that. Rob Thompson is an incredible baseball mind. He's generally regarded as a really, really good bench coach. He really is somebody who probably deserves a chance to manage. But where the Phillies are, I really don't think Gabe Kapler is going anywhere. And it really all goes back to, and by the way, there were many other choicely worded Gabe Kapler mailbag questions I chose not to put on the website because, of course, this is a family radio station. But this year was as Greg's question said, this was the let's find out mode. And you know what? Unless you put the expectation on Kapler going in that you got to win a World Series this year or else, then you get rid of him. You get rid of any manager when it happens, right? You saw what happened in St. Louis, Mike Matheny. This was the year they were expected to win. Well, guess what? Luckily, they're going to win, but not until they had to fire their manager, Mike Matheny. So if you have the pieces and believe you have the pieces, look at Washington, right? I mean, I think there's an X on the back of their general manager, Mike Rizzo, because they got rid of Dusty Baker, seeming like that was the problem. And guess what? The pieces did not win under the next manager either. So then it's a matter of the pieces. So I think here the whole organization, whether it's Matt Klentak or Gabe Kapler, they spent this year in let's find out mode. And really, I don't see any scenario in which Gabe Kapler does not return because, I mean, really, he did not do anything other than he was kind of expected to do, which is really keep the steady course, keep this team going, see what you have, and I think that what they know now will definitely lead to who they bring in the off season in terms of players. So, but you can't put that on the manager.
All right, we got a good one here from V-Man. He wants to know, who are the keepers? Just Aaron Nola and Hoskins? Everyone else expendable? Wilson Ramos, sign him, yes or no? J.P. Crawford and Scott Kingery, shortstop and second base next year.
Yeah, so there was a report over the weekend, and I posted about it on 97.3 ESPN.com, where FanCredit Sports' John Heyman said that the Phillies are open to trading just about anybody not named Aaron Nola and Rhys Hoskins. So I think, yes, indeed, they are the keepers. They are the core of this roster. And I think what you found out this year was that there were many really good major league players or potential major league players, but you don't really have impact players like you have with those two. So the question becomes then what do you do? And I think what's going to play into those other two questions specifically about the middle infield and catcher is I think the plan is you find who you can get. In terms of, can you get Bryce Harper? Can you get Manny Machado? And once you have that key impact player, you kind of let the rest of the pieces fall. So, it's a matter of who you keep in the middle infield. So besides Crawford and Scott Kingery, you have Cesar Hernandez in the mix, and that could affect Maikel Franco at third base, depending upon who they bring in. So you've got all these pieces, and what's going to happen is they're going to get the impact pieces that they can get to be those impact pieces that Greg's earlier question was talking about. And once you have that, you figure out the rest.
Well, here's a question. It almost feels like the Sixers, except for the Sixers have Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons already. So, yeah, getting LeBron was disappointing, but at least they have two guys that in-house they can grow plus Fultz. I feel if the Phillies are putting their eggs in a basket, if they don't get them, then what are they?
That's a good point. I mean, I do really believe that the Phillies are very well positioned to get one of the big impact players. And some people out there are definitely even saying both. I think Ken Rosenthal mentioned that there's the possibility that people think that the Phillies will get both. I mean, you look around the league, the people they would be up against for some of these big impact players, their payrolls are strapped. I mean, one of the best things about Manny Machado going to the Dodgers is they are up against a salary cap. Now, it's a salary cap in terms of the luxury tax. There's not a salary cap, of course, but nobody wants to go over the luxury tax because then you're paying double for these players. So Clayton Kershaw, the only way I can see the Dodgers getting rid of, re-signing Machado is if they allow someone like Clayton Kershaw to walk in free agency. If Clayton Kershaw walks from his deal, then he might get that. So Clayton Kershaw has that opt out. Everybody seems to expect him to opt out. And everybody seems to expect him to go back to the Dodgers. But if that doesn't happen, the Dodgers don't really have any money available for somebody like Machado or Harper, and they would be the type of players that you normally have involved. The Dodgers are one of the big spenders, as are the Cubs. Cubs are up against the luxury tax as well. So there's not a whole lot of competition for the big impact players, and the Phillies are one of the few teams positioned to do it. So I think they have a real shot. And then what happens with these other guys is very much going to depend upon who they can land or not land. And when you look at the likes of somebody like Wilson Ramos, I think he's a great piece to bring back. But if you get him on a couple of years so that you can still develop Alfaro for the long term because he's very talented, I think you do it. If he finds a team willing to give him too many years, well, then you don't. I mean, I think if you're the Phillies, you use your financial strength and pay him a lot of money per year to only do 2 years, and you see what you can do. And then in the middle infielders, there's going to be teams out there that like these players. And somebody out there might make the Phillies a deal that makes a lot of sense for a Hernandez or a Crawford or a Kingery. I think they prefer to keep Kingery still, but a lot depends on who likes the Phillies players and what they can get for them in return. Because the Phillies still have other pieces they will want to add, and upgrading some of these positions at the same time you trade some of these assets for other assets. I think that's what's going to end up happening. But that's kind of unpredictable because you don't know who's willing to give you what.
Frank Klose, a lot of questions for the offseason ahead. Phillies playing out the string, 6 left to go. He's at Frank Klose on Twitter, and you can read his Phillies insight and analysis at 97.3ESPN.com. Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, guys.